Arvind, for joining me today. To start, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kieran. My name is Arvind Sridhar. I'm a senior here at Brown University, concentrating in computer science and economics. Currently one of the two student leads of the Brown Entrepreneurship Program, which is the largest student entrepreneurship club here at Brown University. We have over 120 members, one of the largest funded clubs on campus, and really an entrepreneurial hub that's housed directly under the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship, which is the new entrepreneurial hub at the university level for entrepreneurship here at Brown University. So excited to chat today. Hopefully have some insights to share in terms of my own track and personal journey going forward. After graduation, I'll be starting as a product manager at Adobe, working on video, cloud, Gen AI, and the intersection of those three topics, culminating and starting in August of 2024. So, if we touch on that, happy to talk about it. But in general, very happy with the work that has been done here at Brown, and excited to get into the details.
Yeah, awesome overview. And how did you first learn about the Brown Entrepreneurship Program on campus?
Yeah, certainly. So I had a really, unique background in terms of where I went to high school prior to coming to Brown University. I went to a high school pretty close by here in Providence. And as a result, as a student that started to dabble into the idea of entrepreneurship, and it seemed like a really exciting concept at the time, certainly, to take an idea to fruition, create something new, create something innovative, creative. Those concepts were not very well addressed in the area by many other places except for Brown University. So I found myself as a high school student often dropping by, for example, some of like the Founder Friday talks that the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship would host, which would be here on Brown University's campus. They would often bring in either alumni who had founded companies, or perhaps community members from the area that had founded small or large businesses, and have them in to speak. And I think that gave me a really cool and unique perspective on how entrepreneurship was being highlighted and invested into by the university, both in terms of who the people they were that they were bringing in, as well as the funding that was going into entrepreneurship and the cultivation of entrepreneurship here at the university. In 2016, the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship opened up a brand new $25 million building on Thayer Street, which runs directly through campus. And at that time, by that point, I had my eyes set on Brown as a place that I wanted to go to, due to both the small cohort of entrepreneurship that was present. So it's not overwhelming in the sense of not everybody's trying to start a startup, not everybody's trying to get in on this. So there's a lot of opportunity there to dive in as a student and gain exposure to the network of entrepreneurship here at Brown quite fast. But also having the funding and opportunities that would mirror some of the larger schools and larger entrepreneurship programs in the country. There seemed to be a really beautiful intersection there, and I was excited to hear about that and eventually apply to Brown and get involved with EP.
Awesome. And you mentioned a couple of things when you were sort of giving an overview of the org. You mentioned you guys are housed under the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship, and then you also are like one of the most well-funded orgs on campus. Can you talk about like both those things? So like how you describe the relationship with the Nelson Center, and how are you guys funded?
Yeah, absolutely. So the entrepreneurship program is a club that is situated outside of the traditional club structure at Brown University. At Brown, we have 200 plus student organizations that are all kind of a part of the university community student groups, and it filters down into the student organizations. Brown Entrepreneurship Program is separated out in that the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship is a separate division of the university in and of itself from the administrative level. And the Brown Entrepreneurship Program is the student branch of that. So although it is a student club and recognized as a student club, we have quite a bit more autonomy in terms of, for example, every other club on campus is often funded not by departments or by various subsectors of the administration, but rather a large community pool of funding that's allotted for student activities that filters down to the student clubs. For us, we get funded directly by the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship, which, as I mentioned before, has been endowed with a lot of alumni funds as well as university funds, since the university themselves is investing very heavily into cultivating entrepreneurship here on campus. So as a result, the club has quite a bit of autonomy in terms of how it operates, as well as access to capital a large portion of which we actually use to fund startups and grant ideas. Like we give grants to ideas rather. Even if it's at a very early stage, we really want to incentivize students to start doing market research, thinking from bottom up, even if that's conducting a survey here on campus to start the validation of their idea. We want to give them, even if it's micro grants, scaling up to larger investments that are equity free. The club uses their funding as such to really invest in the startups and cultivation of ideas here on campus.
Cool. And how does a student get into this club? Is there some sort of application process, or walk me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. There is an application process. Brown EP is one of the most applied to clubs now on campus, which has been a really exciting, as the club has gained quite a bit of traction over the last 8 years with the opening of the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship's new building and new faculty and resources and everything along those lines. We have an application process. We try to make EP as little restrictive as possible, in the sense that this is not. We've heard kind of the horror stories of clubs at other universities having 5% or 10% acceptance rates, right? And like, we're not applying to college again here. There's no reason to go through that level of filtering. The idea is that anybody who wants exposure and access to entrepreneurship should be able to cultivate it in some form. So students apply to the club. We take quite literally as many people as we can, and often we're able to take people who demonstrate interest in some capacity. So let's say they come to the meetings ahead of time, or they come to a good bit of the info sessions and talk to the team leads. There's pretty high success rates for students that demonstrate interest. And as a result, we also meet within the building of the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship that has quite a bit of capacity and a lecture hall that we're able to use to create more space in our club. And also we make a point that students that are not in the club, whether that's they don't get accepted or they never applied in the first place, they still have access to all of the events that EP has, as well as, in our funding of grants and ventures, we don't exclusively fund EP startups, right? Like students that are within the club that then start a startup or have an idea. It is open to not only all Brown students, that includes undergraduate, graduate, and PhD students, but also to the Rhode Island School of Design students. The RISD is one of the top design schools, if not the top design school in the entire country. If you talk about entrepreneurship as creativity, there are very few college campuses that are more creative than RISD, and we really try to harness the talent that's there in terms of pushing towards entrepreneurship and showing that as a viable path for students that are in design school, and especially one of that caliber. And we fund startups and ideas that come out of RISD if they approach us. So even if they're not in the club, they're more than welcome to access our resources.
Awesome. And when I was looking at the website before this call, I saw a couple of your programs: Innovation Dojo, Freshman Immersion, the Women's Empowerment Conference. You also mentioned a couple other things like Founder Friday Talks. I don't know if you guys are still doing that. And then also some sort of like funding. Can you talk about, I guess, just like what you guys are focused on right now? Like, what are your programs? What are ways people are getting involved?
Yeah, so the entire theme of the club, and this has shifted from previous years, right? Especially when EP was getting off the ground, it was very much like networking, connecting to Brown alums, connecting to professionals who had done, notes of significance within the sector of entrepreneurship. Now, I would say the main focus of the club absolutely is active entrepreneurship, right? Really pushing for active entrepreneurship. We're in college. There's really no downside to trying something, right? Like, it's not a class. If you fail a startup, you don't hurt your prospects at a future. If anything, it helps to show that you've tried something and taken initiative. There's really no downside. We absolutely try to push to active entrepreneurship. Many of the programs that you just mentioned, and I'd like to highlight one, Innovation Dojo, for example, is an incubator program that we have within Brown EP, housed as a team within Brown EP, where every year, traditionally this has been limited to first and second year students specifically, who may not have much exposure to entrepreneurship, might have an idea, doesn't really know what that means in terms of pushing that forward. Every year we take on 30 to 40 students, every semester rather, so twice a year, 30 to 40 students in an incubator program that meets for 2.5 hours weekly with guest speakers and resources, and a series of workshops to take an idea not from 0 to 100, but from 0 to 1, right? So it's the first step in our pipeline. After that idea is at 1, after you have a team, after you have a fleshed out idea, a concept that is based on bottom up research, and you found some sense of product market fit. That's when, leading this incubator program, we're able to help you further. If you want to start, getting grants from us, if you want to start networking with some of our alums, we provide those resources. But really, we try to make it as easy as possible to start. You really don't have to have anything. You don't need to come to us with a pitch deck. You don't need to come to us with a team. You come to us with a thought of, hey, like, maybe I have been trying something and I feel like there's something wrong here, that maybe there's a better solution for this problem. That's the level that we start at, and we'll take it from there. We want to provide as much push to active entrepreneurship as possible.
Nice. Sounds like a really cool program. And then I was kind of curious if you could talk a little bit more about like the grants and funding. Like, how does that work? What's that application process look like? And what are maybe the sizes of the grants that you guys are giving out?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sizes of the grants certainly depend on, like how far the idea has gotten. We try to, every startup that gets within our funnel, we try to, give some funding to, and it's very based on what would help them at the moment, right? So for example, if a student comes to us with just a very preformed idea, doesn't have a team, doesn't have pitch deck, anything like that you would, constitute as ready for some sort of like pre-seed or anything like that. If it's very, very bare bones, then the step that we take with them is we work with them to say, okay, like, what do you need in order to get from this step to getting to an idea that is rooted in evidence and rooted in product market fit? That might mean that we fund, collection, like surveys. We might fund development of early stage prototypes or MVPs. And this can be, I think especially at a school like Brown, and with any college students, like even three-digit sums go a long way, right, at that level, right? To just get the money needed to if you need server credits for 2 weeks to test a product and see if it actually works and build some sort of MVP, that goes a long way, right? Like, so I think at that level, we usually fund around the 3-digit level for the early stage ideas. And then we provide grants at the 4-digit level for kind of much more fleshed out ideas that have a track and plan of how they plan to use the money for a few months going forward, what sort of initiatives that money would be used for. Again, everything is completely equity free. And, like the club operates at like, even at 5 digits, if there are like really, really compelling stories, a product is on the cusp of breaking through, all that sort of stuff. And we make sure it's very, like, we never want entrepreneurship and financial accessibility to be in opposition to each other, right? There are absolutely students coming with a background of either being heavily on financial aid, like entrepreneurship is very daunting because it's taking a risk, and monetarily that can be difficult. We hope to eliminate all of those problems in the short term at the very least, right? Long term, we're not going to be able to provide salaries, but while you're a student, we want to make sure that you can pursue this without having to break your bank account.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what do you see as like the biggest opportunities just to improve how Brown EP supports student entrepreneurship on campus? Like, what are the biggest gaps that you're seeing?
Certainly, I think that's a great question. I would love to see Brown EP continue to go in a direction of branching out into the community, right? So for example, Providence is a city that is home to quite a bit of gentrification in terms of even how the high schools are placed, right? So at the high school level, like I was lucky enough to go to a high school where I even heard the word entrepreneurship, and that sparked something in me. There are absolutely high schools, not even far from Brown, but located next to the high schools that are much more well-funded, or private schools that have access to a lot of opportunities. Like, you will find schools across the street where there are low graduation rates, where students are not encouraged to have a creative spark or pursue a creative spark in the same way. And I think Brown and EP in particular can play a huge role in branching that divide. So for example, like as a high school student, especially like if you're a student that doesn't have whose school doesn't have a traditional pipeline of sending students to a school like Brown, there's a lot of authority that can come from students at this university coming to your school, to your class, and telling you that your idea is a good idea, right? Like that's not that there's a lot of power in words in that sense. And I think ultimately we are students, we are just college students. It's easy to think that we have a huge say in the world. And I think like oftentimes that has to be tempered down a little bit in terms of seeing that there's a long way to go. But absolutely, I remember when I was in high school and the power and words that a college student could and their encouragement could provide to me. Providing that to students in the community, I think, is a direction that EP can and should go in.
Yeah.
And I hope to branch even out the funding to the community as well, and encouraging high school startups.
Yeah, I think just that validation would go a long way for people that are young or people that are students. And kind of curious, like for people that watch this video and maybe aren't a Brown student, like what's the best way to like plug in if they want to help Brown students with entrepreneurship? Is it reaching out to be a mentor? Is it reaching out to help with other things? Like how do they get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, if you are a professional who feels that you can offer advice to startups, I'm very happy and proud to say that Brown is a really creative institution, and that some of the ideas that we have coming out of here don't really follow the molds of traditional entrepreneurship, and that can be very exciting as a mentor. I would absolutely recommend, you're welcome to shoot me an email, which I'm sure will be in the blog post, to reach out and say, like, I believe my skills could be of value to your startups. We have a great mentor matching program with startups. We have matched, even over the course of, I think, this semester, more than 20 startups with various mentors that have helped them tremendously. And we'd love to get as many people in that network as possible. If you're at the student level, if you're not a professional, but rather somebody who's looking to get access to more opportunity, quite a bit of our teams operate remotely and would love to, whether that's in the form of internships and or anything along those lines. Like if there's any idea that resonates with you, or you'd like to get connected with ideas at Brown or RISD that might resonate with you, that's a connection that we could potentially facilitate and provide some sort of internship or part-time working opportunity on behalf of a lot of these startups to get involved.
Awesome. And last question, is there anything I didn't ask about that you think is important to highlight or know about Brown EP?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think, I definitely want to highlight that Brown EP is a club that is very dynamic. And, for example, this year, this semester rather, half of our new club membership constitutes of newly admitted first-year students and perhaps like a few second-year students. This is a club that is very with the times, right? There's a lot of change happening. There's change in even how students of our age are thinking about entrepreneurship pre and post COVID. I have, in my conversations with even first-year students, I've noticed a tremendous difference in my preconceived notions of how to approach entrepreneurship versus, a student that was virtual for 2 years of high school starting in 10th grade, right? Like, there's a different approach to what a successful business means. There are a lot of creative ideas. It's absolutely rotating year over year. And I think a fantastic network to plug into that is brimming with creativity, if that's something that's of interest.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arvind, for joining me today.
Perfect. Thank you so much.